Hello, this is your Cyber Resilience Questions Answered, the series where we answer your questions about cybersecurity. I'm Daniel. I'm a cybersecurity engineer and educator, and I'm joined by Kirstie. Hi, Kirstie.
Hello, I'm Kirstie. I've been helping people with their cybersecurity for the past 5 years, and I've been helping people understand what the latest scams and threats are and how to protect themselves online.
So, Kirstie, we have been sent a bunch of questions from workers in Scotland. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at these questions and then we're going to answer them in these videos. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer in a future episode, you can leave it in the comments, but you can also send it to us via our form, and the form will be linked to in the description underneath the video. We've had lots of questions come in about VPNs, what they do and when you should use them. So I thought this is maybe a good VPN question to start off with. So Kirstie, we've been asked, I have to use a VPN when I'm at work. What does it do?
Okay, good question. So we'll start with what a VPN is. So that is, VPN stands for Virtual Private Network. And it's essentially a tool that creates a secure and encrypted connection between your computer or your mobile device and the internet. So it's usually an app that you can download, or sometimes it's installed already on your work computer or laptop. And when you use a VPN, your internet traffic is routed through your VPN provider. So it then looks like you're browsing the web from that VPN company rather than from where you actually are. So it basically hides your real IP address and it encrypts your data. So you're making it much more difficult for anybody to spy on your online activity and steal your personal information. Kind of like a little secure tunnel that nobody can kind of see the information that you're doing. So maybe Daniel, like when would people kind of use a VPN? Why is this sort of a popular thing to maybe use?
Yeah, so you say that you have to use it for work. So in this case, your work is the VPN provider. So what you're doing is you're connecting securely to your work's server, and then it behaves just as if you're actually like in the building, plugged straight into the network. Your work won't want whatever Wi-Fi network you're on to be able to see what websites you're browsing, but it's not in the workplace. VPNs can be helpful. A lot of people choose to use a VPN when they're on public Wi-Fi network. And the reason why is because when you're connected to the network in like a coffee shop or on a train or in the hotel, you don't know what they're tracking or logging. So for example, if you're browsing the web in a coffee shop, the company that set up the router in that coffee shop, they can see a list of all the websites that people connected to that network are browsing on and visiting. Now, you might prefer that not to happen. So if you use a VPN, well, the coffee shop just sees that Daniel's phone is connected to the VPN company. They can't see, oh, he was on BBC, then he was on The Guardian, then he was on Spotify, then he was on Netflix. They would just see the VPN company's name. So people prefer to do that. People also quite like them when they're traveling. Kirstie, have you used a VPN when you travel?
I definitely used it when traveling, and it can be quite useful. It means that sometimes you can visit websites that you might not be able to normally when you're abroad. So, for example, if you're wanting to watch something on your BBC iPlayer, you have to be in the UK. But if you use a VPN, you could pretend that you're in the UK, even if you are abroad, and watch that when you're there. So that's probably a good example of where maybe I've used it in the past.
Kirstie, have we had another question on VPNs? I think we have.
Yeah. So if you use your mobile data while you're out and about, so if you're using your 3G or your 4G network, for example, Daniel, do you still need to use a VPN?
No, you don't. If you're using your 3G or your 4G or your 5G when you're out and about on your phone, you don't need to use a VPN. That's because your phone is connected directly to your mobile service provider. So you're connected directly to the EE network or the Vodafone network or the O2 network or whoever you're with. That connection is just between your phone and their network. So you're not actually connected to the public Wi-Fi network, which is the place where it could go wrong. So actually, it's probably the most secure thing to do. So if you do have lots of data on your phone, you've not kind of got a limit you have to worry about, then that's probably the best option, actually. because you're kind of removing that risk. You don't need the VPN to mitigate against the risk that isn't there.
Yeah, I would recommend certainly using the 3G or 4G or 5G connection instead of public Wi-Fi, especially if you're going to be banking or anything that you're inputting sensitive information. But we've got another one here as well, Daniel, why would you turn it off? I know we were talking about there, like we would just use the 3G or 5G connection, but are there other reasons why people might turn off their VPN? So for example, is it maybe you can't access something?
Yeah, some companies and some websites don't let you access their content if you're using a VPN. So for example, the bank that I'm with, I can't log in if I'm connected to a VPN. And the reason is banks have various security checks that they do to make sure that you are actually connecting in a sort of typical and a normal way. So if I go on the banking app, they would see, okay, he's at this location and is using this network. That seems normal and typical. If I'm on a VPN, I might seem like I'm in Canada on some random thing shared with thousands of other people. They can't really do as many checks and verifications. So because of that, they take the cautious approach and they just say, okay, you can't connect. You're not able to access the website. So sometimes something just won't load up when you're using a VPN. Some streaming websites also detect that you're using a VPN and they won't let you access them. So something that other people use VPNs for is accessing content that's geo-blocked, like you were saying, Kirstie, with accessing iClear from abroad.
Yeah.
There's other Netflix catalogs around the world that might have different programs to the UK. Now, they all charge different amounts. They have different rights, agreements. Netflix generally doesn't let you connect using a VPN. So if you find you can't get onto a particular website using a VPN, you might have to disconnect. So I think we've got one more question on VPNs here. And this question is, if you're in a cafe and you turn off the VPN to access your bank account, will someone be able to see inside your bank account?
It's a good question. So the answer is no. So when you go to a secure website like your bank, then your connection is encrypted. So that's quite secure. Nobody's going to be able to access that information. However, the person that's in control of the Wi-Fi network, maybe in your local cafe, will be able to see that you've been on the bank's website or app. So in some ways that might also be telling, because you can also tell who you bank with. So it could lead to other sort of implications there, but they won't be able to actually see your bank details. But as we mentioned earlier, you can just wait till you're home to check your bank account so that you're on your own Wi-Fi network. Or if you do have to check it when you're out and about, switching to your 4G, 3G, 5G connection is a much more secure way of doing it, because it just limits any availability for them to see who you bank.
Yeah, so it's not quite as extreme as them being able to see the contents of your bank account. They wouldn't be able to get in, but yeah, they might learn what company you bank with, for example.
So Daniel, we've had a great question come through, and this is on the topic of antivirus. So one of the questions was, is the built-in virus protection enough on a laptop?
Yeah, so this is a question that we get asked quite a lot. Is it worth paying for antivirus? Because it's something that when you go and buy a new computer, they often try and sell you sort of a subscription to a service as well. Do you need to do that? Well, your computer does come with built-in antivirus protection. If you've got something like Windows computer, it's got Windows security. And Windows security is really quite good because it works in real time and it downloads updates daily. So for most people, it is enough. It is okay to just rely on the stuff that's built in. However, there are some features that you do get with the paid for ones that aren't built into the one that's there already. So for example, if you've got a Mac, well, the inbuilt antivirus doesn't scan in real time. So when you download a file, it's not going to get scanned immediately as soon as it lands on your computer. You have to wait for the inbuilt antivirus to get around to scanning it at some point. It will do, but it's not going to do it immediately. Whereas some of the paid for ones do watch for a new file being downloaded, and then they'll scan it straight away. There's some other features as well that you often get with these paid suites, like a more configurable firewall or phishing protection or anti-spam. But when it comes to just finding viruses, the built-in antivirus software is probably enough for most people, especially if you're on Windows. Kirstie, we've been asked, is it important to keep the computer up to date?
I think it's probably important to say how important updates actually are when it comes to protecting your devices, because updates are one of the key things that we always promote to say that you should do. Because what happens is there's a known vulnerability out there that can be exploited, then that's when the companies will provide this patch for this vulnerability and they send it to you as part of an update. So it's really important to do those updates as soon as you can. Obviously, if it comes in the middle of a presentation that you're delivering, you don't have to stop your presentation and do it there, but try and do it that evening or the next day or two. So it's important that you keep them up to date as soon as you can, if possible, because it's really going to protect your device and it's one of our top thing to do.
So here's another question on the topic of antivirus. And this person is asking, do I need antivirus software on my phone?
On your phone? Okay.
What do you think, Kirstie?
I wouldn't say that you do necessarily, but I think it's probably good to think about how do the viruses get in the first place? You know, and that's normally through clicking on links or downloading files or things like that. That's how viruses can usually infect your devices. So when we're using our mobile phone, the apps usually come through stores like the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. So what happens is these companies will have scanned for any malicious software within these apps before you install it onto your device. So you can be sure that that's secure as can be. But if you've downloaded apps from unofficial stores or third party, there's definitely more of a risk there. So that's why we always recommend that if you're downloading anything on your devices that you go to these official stores, because then you're not at risk from downloading any malware. And iPhones don't let you install any other sort of files that you've downloaded yourself, so there's no need for an antivirus. You are already protected there. But Daniel, you've got an Android and it's a bit different for your phone.
Yeah, it is. So on Android, you can just download, it's called an APK file. So you just download it and then you tap on it and you can hit install. Now your phone does give you a warning. It's like, this is from an unauthorized store. Google can't guarantee that this app doesn't contain malicious content, etc., etc., etc. But you can still install it. Google actually includes Google Play Protect. And Google Play Protect is an antivirus product. So if you have an Android phone like a Samsung or a OnePlus or a Pixel, it will actually do an antivirus scan once every 24 hours. You'll be able to find Google Play Protect in your settings. That's your antivirus software. So it's built in, it's turned on by default. So in short, you don't need to download antivirus for your phone. It's either not necessary if you've got an iPhone because you can only get apps from the App Store and the App Store already scan the apps. And on Android, well, it's already built in. So another question that we've been asked is particularly about Windows security. So this is someone who's been on a course and they've asked, Windows security has an offline scan. Does it get done automatically? So just to explain what an offline scan is, it's a type of scan that when your computer is turned off, when the operating system isn't running, your computer can then scan itself really thoroughly. It can go through all the files. You can't scan a file that's open, which is why it needs to be turned off. So it doesn't happen automatically because your computer would need to be off to do it. So, but having said that, it's not something you would need to do unless you knew that there was some malware or a virus on your computer. So if Windows found something that was malicious or infected normally, it would then recommend that you do one of these more thorough offline scans. It's more of a belt and braces next step after you've found something suspicious. It's not something that you would need to do on a regular basis.
Good for clearing that up. Don't think I was quite sure what an offline scan was, so I think that explained it quite well. But Daniel, we have had another question in from one of the workers, and they have a computer that must be about 15 years old. And their question is about, will the virus software be too old and not very effective if they've got a device that's 15 years old?
Yeah, so when it comes to the actual antivirus software itself, if it's still running on that older computer and it's still being kept up to date, well, it is still going to keep searching for viruses and it's still going to look for the current threat. However, if you've got an older computer, it's more at risk in other ways. So at some point, the manufacturer is going to stop issuing software updates and patches for security issues. So usually this is about 5 years. Some computers are a bit longer. Macs tend to be supported longer than Windows computers. So when it comes to antivirus on an older computer, you should still have it. You should run it. And it's more important on an older computer because they are more vulnerable. But there is inherently slightly more risk with an older computer. But good on you for making it last 15 years. If we all kept our tech that long, we'd really cut down on e-waste. The amount of laptops that must get chucked away that are only a couple of years old is insane.
Yeah, that is impressive. I've recently just updated mine, as you know, Daniel. Mine was 7 years though.
Kirstie, we are out of time for this video, but we will be back. We will answer more questions in future in the next episode. If you've got a question that you'd like to ask, then send it in using the form underneath this video in the description. If you leave your email address, we'll even email you to let you know that your question has been answered. So if you've got a security feature or tool or question or a myth that you need busted, then Kirstie and I are here to answer your questions in a future episode. Kirstie, thank you again for joining me on the panel.
No problem at all, Daniel. Thanks for having me here. I enjoy kind of hearing what the sort of questions are that everybody has. So yeah, as Daniel said, send us in your requests and we'll try our best to answer them. But really enjoy this series. Thanks for having me on.
Great. And we will see you on the next episode. Bye.